They called him Nova, a ghost in the machine. No face, no name, just code and conviction. While his country vanished under censorship and fear, he didn't pick up a gun. He picked up a keyboard. Some say he was a genius. Others say he was a criminal. But the truth is, he was both. Because when a dictator silences a nation, sometimes the only weapon left is information. Nova found something the regime had buried. Images of villages burned, people erased from existence. He could have run. Instead, he fought back. Not for fame, not for glory, but because he believed that one person, armed with truth, could rewrite the story of an entire country. And for a moment, he did. This is the story of the hacker who hunted a dictator. In the quiet hours of the night, when most of the world is asleep, a single glow often remains, the pale blue light of a computer screen. And sometimes, behind that light, sits someone changing history. This is the story of a hacker who didn't want fame, money, or power. He wanted justice, in a place where justice had been erased. In 2017, a small Eastern European country, one that rarely made the news, began to lose its voice. Journalists were disappearing. Websites that criticized the government went dark overnight. And a dictator, who'd ruled for nearly 3 decades, tightened his grip on everything from elections to the internet itself. But what he didn't know was that someone was already watching him. His name, or at least the one he used online, was Nova. No one knew where he lived. No one knew his real name. All they knew was that Nova appeared one day on encrypted forums frequented by whistleblowers, journalists, and activists, and he claimed he had evidence that the regime was fabricating everything. Election results, court decisions, even satellite imagery used to prove economic growth. People laughed, until he started posting proof. Within weeks, Nova began leaking internal emails from state media. Editors receiving instructions directly from the president's office. Spreadsheets showing how thousands of fake social media accounts were being used to flood the internet with praise for the dictator and drown out dissent. He wasn't just hacking the regime systems. He was hacking its story. To understand how radical that was, you have to know the country itself. A place where fear was currency and silence was survival. Children were taught to thank the president before every meal. Every news broadcast began with applause. Even the weather reports ended with blessings for the leader of the nation. In such a world, truth itself becomes contraband. And Nova had just become a smuggler of it. At first, people thought he was working with foreign intelligence. Maybe the CIA, but he wasn't. He was just a university dropout, a former cybersecurity student who had watched his professor get arrested for teaching encryption. That was his breaking point. When the police dragged the man out of class, Nova swore he'd never stay silent again. So he went underground. He took a job at an internet cafe to access networks without traceable IPs. He built his own encryption tools, wrote code on paper to avoid detection, and began infiltrating state servers one at a time. Not for revenge, but for evidence. And then he found something that changed everything. Buried deep in a Ministry of Defense database was a folder simply labeled Orion. Inside were satellite images, hundreds of them. Villages burned, bodies, and a pattern of military operations that the government denied ever happened. The dictator had been secretly waging war on his own people, purging dissenters in remote provinces, calling them terrorists. But the images showed something else. Civilians, children. That's when Nova made his choice. He was no longer just leaking information. He was going to bring the entire regime to light. Over the next 3 months, Nova sent encrypted packages to journalists in exile. Each contained data logs, photos, and code showing how the government manipulated online votes, manufacturing a 98% approval rating that never existed. One reporter later said, "It was like watching reality being rewritten, and then suddenly rewritten back." But with every leak, Nova's circle of safety shrank. Government cybersecurity forces, trained by foreign contractors, were deployed to hunt him down. They didn't call him Nova. They called him the Phantom. The hunt for him was unlike anything the country had seen. They shut down internet exchanges. They arrested programmers, coders, even gamers, anyone who might have known him. At one point, they banned the sale of USB drives nationwide. Nova responded not with silence, but with art. He left cryptic messages in the metadata of official propaganda videos, binary poems hidden in plain sight. One of them read, "You can delete the truth, but you can't erase the people who remember it." It was never about bringing down one man. It was about restoring the collective memory of a nation forced to forget. And then he disappeared. For months, nothing. No leaks. No posts. No trace. Journalists feared he'd been caught or killed. But then, 6 months later, something extraordinary happened. A major international human rights tribunal announced an investigation into the dictator's regime. The evidence? Digital documents, verified by independent analysts, traced back to Nova's leaks. Even in disappearance, he had left behind a trail strong enough to shake a government. But here's the thing no one expected. Around the same time, a small tech startup in Estonia began receiving anonymous donations, large ones, accompanied by a single message: build tools for those without a voice. No one could prove it was Nova. But to this day, that company funds secure communication software for journalists and activists worldwide. It's almost poetic. The hacker who once tore down walls, now helping others speak freely through them. Experts still debate who Nova really was. Some say he was a group of people, not one. Others think he's still out there, operating under different names. But maybe that's the point. Maybe Nova was never a person. Maybe Nova was an idea. The idea that even in the darkest corners of the internet, even under the weight of fear, one person with enough conviction can still rewrite the story of an entire nation. When you strip away the headlines, the hacks, the politics, what's left is a question that doesn't go away. What does it mean to be free if truth itself can be imprisoned? Nova's story isn't about hacking a system. It's about hacking certainty, the belief that power is untouchable, that history can be edited. And in doing so, he forced the world to remember something simple, something dangerous, something beautiful. That information, when used with courage, becomes more than data. It becomes defiance. There's an old saying among hackers: the first rule of the internet is that nothing truly disappears. And maybe that's our only hope. Because no matter how many firewalls they build, or how many lies they post, somewhere in the glow of a quiet room, someone is still watching, still coding, still whispering truth into the dark. And maybe that's enough.